How to have fun anytime, anywhere. Step 1. Go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2. Collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3. Play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games. All for free?
Step 4. Unleash your excitement.
Woohoo!
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you so much for tuning into the program. It's Monday, April the 29th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. David Williams, he's produced the program. Let's get the week off to a flying start. That requires your participation. So, if you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue and on the air, 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, it's toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. So it really feels like the winter sporting season has finally come to a conclusion. Checking in at Dundas, Ontario on the Allen Cup. Close but no cigar. I mean, the Southern Shore Breakers played really well throughout the entirety of the tournament, ran into a buzzsaw. The Dundas Real McCoys take them out 6-1 in the final. So Dundas, back-to-back Allen Cups for them, but congratulations to the Breakers on a fine run. And now to the Don Johnson Memorial Cup held at the Glacier Mount Pearl over the past week. So both the Caps and the Blades were looking really solid, of course, the Mount Pearl Blades, but they both lost in the semi. Eventual winner, the Antigonish Bulldogs. And as I said, winter season pretty much over. Felt like curling was a really long year this year, but Canada wraps it up with a couple of goals on the Senior Worlds. Both the men and the women take home the gold. And despite the motley weather, don't look at the forecast if you don't want a bit of a downer, because it's going to be like this the entire week, apparently, in this neck of the woods anyway. But the regatta racing shells around Kitty Vitty Lake. Be interesting to see if there's any more female teams enter in to row the long course. There was 2 last year, including a really young crew who said that they're going to continue to row the long course in the race, but the shells are out. Apparently they're going to be available sometime mid-afternoon today. And baseball launching a new program inside of Baseball NL, Step Up to the Plate. We'll get into that a little bit later. And just to look around the world and see some young athletes from here who are excelling. Young fella named Cody Butt. He's from St. John's. His father, Gerald Butt, was a fine baseball player as well. He went to Waterford Valley High. He's pitching in the NCAAs at Williston State College. So he is this last week's player of the week. So in his only start, he went 6 innings, gave up no runs, 2 hits, 15 strikeouts. But through 39 and 2/3 innings so far this year, he has a 2.97 ERA and 78 strikeouts. Congratulations to Cody Butt. What a week, what a year so far. All right, interesting one. Used to be one of my absolute favorite programs on television. Saturday afternoon, I would look forward to the melodramatic introduction, the thrill of victory, and the agony of defeat. ABC's Wild World of Sports debuted on this date in 1961, ran until 1997. Of course, Jim McKay, the best-known host of the program. Time said that Wild World of Sports is one of the 100 best television programs of all time. For folks who watch traditional sports on cable television, you know the sports I'm talking about. But we got to look at some interesting stuff on Wild World of Sports. Hurling, rodeo, curling, highlight, firefighters competitions, arm wrestling, powerlifting, surfing, logger sports, demolition derby, Mexican cliff diving, skiing, gymnastics, things that we didn't necessarily get. And there's a lot of firsts that were accomplished by Wild World of Sports. I did not know this. They were the first U.S. broadcaster to broadcast two-air Wimbledon in 1961, the Indianapolis 500, highlights starting in 61, longer form version 65, the NCAA Men's Basketball Championship, the Daytona 500, the U.S. Figure Skating Championship, the first color broadcast of the Monaco Grand Prix in 1967, the Little League World Series in 1961, the British Open Golf Tournament in 61, X Games, and interestingly, in 1962, they broadcast the Grey Cup on ABC. So Wild World of Sports opened up a great run on this date in 61. All right. You've heard me talk about this particular issue in school, and you know me, I like to talk about education. I think we should all talk about it a bit more. And the province of Ontario is moving forward with legislation to ban the use of cell phones in school, and also to enforce some vaping measures because they have some real concerns with the explosion in the number of young people that are using the vapes. In this province, we've done that. You know, you're not allowed to smoke or vape on government-owned properties. But how is that being enforced? Is it? I mean, who, for instance, in the schools is charged with enforcement of this? Are the vice principals walking the grounds over the course of recess and lunch and after school or what have you? But anyway, as it pertains to cell phones, there's a couple of lame arguments made that, well, people need to be in touch with their family. Look, if your child is in school and you really need he or she, or there is a problem on either end, there's a telephone in the office. And then the province of Ontario, they brought forward this quasi-ban a number of years ago, left it up to the individual schools and boards. And they said, well, it's difficult to enforce. No, it's not. It's difficult to put down a heavy hand and say you're not allowed to use your phone. So in kindergarten to grade 6, has to be on silent and you cannot have it in your hand. Same thing with 7 to 12. So teachers worry about, if I have to be responsible for taking the phones, then they think they'll be liable if there's any damage or a phone is lost. Let's just say that you cannot have your phone in your hand unless express permission has been granted by the teacher. Because yes, we can use technology to advance one curriculum or another, but let's get real. They're a real disruption. They really, truly are. Teachers to a man, to a woman will say exactly that. So let's just make it mandatory here. You cannot have your cell phone in your hand unless you're told you are allowed. Also, interestingly, you are not allowed to use social media on any of the school's networks. They're banning social media platforms because they've been deemed to be more harmful than helpful, I would suggest, for everybody, and certainly for the developing brain of children through kindergarten to grade 12. So they're doing it in Ontario. What do you think? Should we do it here? And I'm going to put this out there one more time, and I don't know how it's being broached by whether it be the minister or the Federation of School Councils or the general school community at large. But the issue regarding absenteeism, look, it's across the board. In the UK, they found the same thing, 60% worse when we talk about, they call it persistently absent. We call it chronically absent. And of course, that's if you miss at least 10% or more of the school year. And the numbers in this province have got to be a concern. So with the good folks that have been charged to perform the education accord and what that's going to look like, we really don't know. And these are startling numbers, but we have to keep putting them back out there on the front burner because they need some attention. You talk about where the province is, economic rebound, long-term stability, long-term prosperity. If these numbers continue and we don't buck the trend, whether it be in math, science, and reading scores or chronic absenteeism, we're setting ourselves up collectively for disaster. In this province, 2/3 of secondary school students were chronically absent in 2022-23. That's up from just under half in 2018-19. All these numbers come from the province's Department of Education. For elementary students, the rate more than doubled to 23% to over 50% in the same period. I know that you've heard me say it a lot, and I'm going to keep saying it because until we figure it out, and again, it's not all on the teachers or the administrators or even the Department of Education, I would suggest. The reasons why children are absent are varied. And to understand how we deal with that on an individual level, which can be arduous, but the numbers, again, if you're chronically absent in grade 6, 75% of those students will not graduate from high school. And long gone are the days, unless you're one of the exceptions and not the rule. No high school diploma, a really long, difficult road ahead when you enter into the workforce and the competition that it presents. Anyway, you want to talk about it? Let's do it. Okay, so the province says they're now going to go to tender to see if they can repurpose some government-owned buildings. All sounds like a good idea. People in this area talk about, Hoyles Escazoni, for instance, right there on Portugal Cove Road. The problem with this particular play at this moment in time is the government has divested from some of the buildings that they owned and all the carry costs, insurance and otherwise. But it looks like a pretty short list of some of these government buildings. So apparently close some 8 years ago in Carbonear was the Interfaith Citizens Home. All makes sense to do what we can. There's no need for government to sitting on buildings they own that are not being used. So whether we repurpose it for one activity, one organization, or one business or another, or yes, for rental housing. And still, if you want to take on what we see in the tent encampment, and how do we boil this down? And this is not in an effort to poison the well. If there are people that simply do not want help, and there are people there who absolutely need and would accept help, whether it be in the form of permanent housing or transition homes or whatever the case may be, will that tent encampment remain in place in that area in the short, medium, or long term? When we were told leading into Christmas that everyone would be helped or supported by then, and here we are at the end of April, nothing's changed necessarily. So is that encampment going to remain there like that into the summer? What do you think? And what could or should the government even be doing about such a complicated issue? And I mentioned last week that I had read a report from Homeless Hub. And this is about healthcare and homelessness. What they did is, over a course of a 5-year study, they looked at 93,426 admissions in the academic teaching hospital in Toronto. So pretty comprehensive. And to not get too down deep in the weeds, and they looked at admissions that were about medical, surgical, and psychiatric services. And they stratified it over the entire sample. The basics are, and we can talk about the societal responsibility and morality or whatever you want to talk about, but let's talk about, in this case, cost. The cost of patients who were housed versus patients who were homeless, on average, and they quantify this through age and gender and a couple of other issues called resource, intensity, weight, all that stuff. Basically, those who were homeless, facing very serious health conditions and frequently hospitalized, were hospitalized for twice the amount of time. In general terms, there's a little bit of a deep dive breakdown, but twice as long. So even if you don't really care, but you really do care about your tax dollars, you really do care about how much money the government borrows, if the issue has been quite clear, 5-year study, almost 94,000 admissions were examined here, about twice the length of time in the hospital at twice the cost. So again, regardless of your stance on any individual or the concept of people who are homeless and behind the Colonial Building or anywhere else in this province or in this country, those issues are undeniable given this study. And when I had a look at it, it really did feel like there was a lot here. I gave it a pretty good going over the weekend, and yes, the comprehensive nature of it, so about twice as much. All right, stick with healthcare for a second. This is troubling. We know that into the pandemic there was all sorts of delays and postponements and the lack of family doctors, and consequently people who may indeed have been caught early with one illness or ailment or another, it didn't happen. And in this case, a backlog out in central Newfoundland for women waiting for cervical cancer screening. So if you were able to and lucky enough to have a family doctor, then the family doctor would remind you, once you were 21 years of age and sexually active, that you would indeed be reminded to get your pap smear. And apparently you get it 3 years in a row, and if it comes up clear, then they say maybe every 3 years. But apparently the backlog has come with consequences in Central. Consequently, people who probably had not had one since prior to the pandemic are now showing up in the later stages of the disease. Cervical cancer is one of the most preventable and treatable cancers, and yet this persists. So they've really put their best foot forward to try to reduce the backlog as much as possible. But it's just another clear example of what it means for so many people in the country that you didn't have a family doctor, and this became one of the unintended consequences. So that's a real story. Maybe Dr. Lynette Powell, who I think we've had Dr. Powell on this program before. She works at the Health Hub in Grand Falls, Windsor. I'm pretty sure that's the town she's working out of. And of course, she closed her own clinic to work in this particular hub, which is a story reflective of, even with the collaborative care clinics, of which there'll be some 35 peppered across the province, unless more and more staff is brought in, we're basically moving healthcare professionals around to try to accommodate. A bit of a vague reference now with healthcare. So London Drugs. They used to have a presence here in this province. They no longer do. They're in Saskatchewan, Alberta, and BC. They got some 80 retail outlets. They suffered a cyber attack. And so just another example of how nefarious the evil lurking around every digital corner. And it's happened in this province with the Meditech system. We still don't know exactly what the ultimate cost was, the final tally. But I bring it forward because I'm going to put this story back out there. And it's not about healthcare. It's about finance. So Stats Canada has told us they have the legal authority to compel the banks to release the information of some 500,000 accounts regarding a bunch of things. So Stats Canada says they use this to establish trends so that policy can follow the trends and the reality versus ideology. So it's a pretty significant story, though. No one's going to be told. Canadians are going to be chosen randomly, talking about bill payments, cash withdrawals from ATMs, credit card payments, and even account balances. The Prime Minister has defended this, and Stats Canada says that they're going to do this. And they say, well, it'll be anonymized. All right, but what does that actually mean? It's fine to tell me that, but we need to know exactly how the data gets transferred. Is it simply the raw data under my name and under my bank account number and just the consequences therein, balance and payments and ATM withdrawals and the like? Because if not, this is potentially a huge problem. It's rare, it's uncommon, but not that rare for government institutions to be the victims of a cyber attack. So we need Stats Canada and maybe even the PMO, to tell us what anonymized means. Give us a clear definition. It's fine to say that, but will my name and bank account number be part of the initial transfer and then they back it out in an effort to keep it anonymous, or will it be transferred like that? I don't even think the Canadian Banking Association knows at this moment in time. They have not been requested to or told that they have to share this information. At this moment in time, nothing has been shared. But I think, some politics issues get exaggerated for exactly that reason, for politics. But on this one, I think there's more questions still to be answered as to 100% what does that mean? All right, a couple of quickies. How are we doing out there, Dave? So we've heard from a few people to talk about expanding the commercial cod fishery. Alberta Wareham, for instance, at Icewater Foods. And maybe we can see if we can get Mr. Wareham on the show. So to expand from 13,000 tonnes to 25,000 metric tonnes, because the industry's catch rate of total cod biomass was only 2% last year, so pretty conservative numbers. And I don't think anybody wants to get back into the realm of 1992 and the cod moratorium, the largest mass layoff in the province and maybe the country's history. But here's the thing, pointing to a couple of areas where the fact that DFO has said that cod has moved from the critical zone to the cautious zone, that's simply because they changed the date with where they start their data points. So there has been no additional fish put in the water. So the move from critical to cautious is a scientific reference. Does it allow for the expansion of the fishery, almost doubling from 13,000 to 25,000? In addition to that, where's the processing capacity? Because if last year trip limits, some harvesters were having a hard time finding someone to sell their cod to, if that's not improved, then catching more doesn't necessarily mean we're processing more. We may end up with some product being dumped, like we did see in the snow crab, for instance, last year. So if Mr. Wareham's available today, I'd love to have him on, because that processing capacity may indeed be something he can address right in his year-round cod facility out in Arnold's Cove. So anyway, it's an interesting one. And can someone tell me what's going on with the price of crab? $4.25, $5, $3.25, $3.65. It's all over the place and changing daily. So we know that this realm of competition is kind of new-ish here in the province, but obviously there's still plenty of confusion out there about who's paying what and why. And then some of the threats that are flowing back and forth. It's one thing for the ASP and the FFAW to say they come up with a formula that's going to make life better for crab and lobster and halibut, but it doesn't really seem to be the case at this moment in time. You want to talk about it? Let's go. So the House of Commons back in action after a week-long break, and of course budget debate and vote. I think we might as well dispel some of the stories that are wondering aloud as to whether or not the NDP will side with the Liberals and voting through this budget as part of their supply and confidence agreement. Let's get real. It would be an absolute shocker if there was any other vote coming from the NDP. So no snap election. I don't think people can get too wound up on that one. A couple of very quick ones. So we see that there's been a fine levied by the courts regarding the largest oil spill in the province's history. Cenovus Energy has been ordered to pay $2.5 million. Has to be paid within 30 days. Sometimes numbers sound like they're meaningful and big. $2.5 million, nothing to sneeze at. But the oil spill itself, out of the White Rose extension, 250,000 litres of oil into the Atlantic Ocean. We all know the story. We've heard the issues regarding the reasons and how the spill happened and Cenovus' role in. But that's $10 a litre. It really doesn't feel like anything more than a slap on the wrist. For context, the fine represents less than 0.1% of the $4.1 billion in net earnings that Cenovus reported in 2023. Largest oil spill in the province's history, 250,000 litres, 2.5 million. They don't quite jibe or line up, in my personal opinion. And what that means for things like Bay du Nord and whatever's going to happen on that front, we can talk about it. By-election date set for Bay Vert Green Bay, May 27. We'll see where we go, because the Liberals, it'll be the third by-election since January. Liberals won, Tories won. We'll see, and you can read into it whatever we can or want when we see the results coming from Bay Vert Green Bay. Advanced polling opens up here pretty soon. And last one. Now, lots of attention being given to who's getting endorsed by who, Polyev and Alex Jones and all that kind of stuff. And who or what can we tell about how and where and who you associate with? Like your mom and dad would say when you're growing up. You can tell a lot about the person based on the company they keep. Okay. In the broader strokes, inside the global tensions that we see day in and day out, the issues regarding Islamophobia and anti-Semitism are off the rails. So just think about it. In the United States, before we get to Canada, at Columbia University, they were telling their Jewish students and professors that they could not guarantee their safety and told them to stay home there one day last week, or maybe extended days. Just imagine if you take out Jewish and put in black. They'd be calling the National Guard. In this country, some of the protests that are calling for intifada, Hamas supporters going around with smoke bomb vests on, which very much look like suicide bomb vests. What's going on, and how are we handling these things? From where I sit, and of course I haven't been exposed to many, first-hand knowledge, but this is growing to be a major league tinderbox problem. Doesn't seem to me that government has the will, the want, or the cojones to try to do more. Now, the ability and the right to protest is sacrosanct. But there's a long way from talking about the humanity crisis in Gaza. There's a long way to talk about the protection for Jews. When you're calling for the death or the extermination of either side, then that goes beyond the right for peaceful protest. It is no longer peaceful when the call is for death. So the feds have been loath to get in on it, and so many provinces are in the same boat. And I know it's a big, traumatic, heavy story and issue, but we can't be afraid of it. All right, congratulations to everyone who participated in this past weekend Shave for the Brave at the Avalon Mall. So whether it be for Jeff and his team, Jeff Eaton and his team at Young Adult Cancer Canada, and everyone who shaved their locks in an effort to raise money and awareness, good on you. We're on Twitter, we're VOCM Openline, follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, let's have a great show. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 4 and say good morning to Alberto Wareham, Icewater Seafoods. Good morning, Alberto. You're on the air.
Good morning. How are you today?
I'm very well, sir. Thanks for asking. How about you?
Good.
So let's talk about your call to expand the cod fishery from 13,000 metric tons to 25,000 metric tons. You talk about the fact that the catch rate exploitation is about 2%. Do you think the time is right, given the fact that the whole precautionary principle really got away from us when we talked about cod 30 years ago?
Yeah, well, based on the latest stock assessment that we had done, Paddy, I guess that DFO advised us on in late March. I mean, we have DFO science confirming now that the stock is in the cautious zone and telling us that it's been there since 2016. You manage a fishery different in the cautious zone and the critical zone. So DFO has 3 zones. So critical, below the limit reference point, you should keep catches at a lower level. Cautious, as you work towards a healthy zone. And then in the healthy zone, then you're, large-scale commercial fishery, MSC certification, etc. So we're in the cautious zone at 24% above the limit reference point. And I mean, based on that, our proposal would bring the exploitation rate to 7.5%. A lot of the other North Atlantic cod stocks, Iceland, Norway, Russia, are managed between 20 and 30%. So I still think it's conservative, and it's time to move to a commercial fishery and to start building, the business back up.
I'm not in the industry, obviously, but when I read those stories coming from DFO, they basically changed the data points where we captured the information. So they changed it from, I think, 83 back to 54. Consequently, got a different look at the strength of the biomass. But what it did not mean is that there's actually any more fish in the water. So when people think, oh, this is really good news, is it as good as it sounds in some corners? Because no more fish were added to the stock.
Okay, so there was two DFO changes made, I guess. So back in October, the one you're referencing is what they did. They put, catch information back to 1954. They put capable information in, and they put young cod abundance in, and that's what they then determined that the stock was in the cautious zone. But last fall, they did a survey in 2J, 3K, 3L, as they always do their fall survey. Having said that, it was early by approximately 6 weeks in 2J and early by approximately 4 weeks in 3K. So we feel that had some influence on what they found. But based on their assessment of trawling the ocean, they did confirm in their full assessment that was out in late March that the stock is in the cautious zone. So we now have an assessment saying the stock's in the cautious zone. So that's the difference than what we had in October.
Okay. Someone asked me this question. I think it was valid. You know, last year, and I don't know if last year is a very good example to talk about anything in the fishery, given the 6-week tie-up and what that meant for capacity with crab in the processing plants, what have you. But do we have the processing capacity? Because last year, some harvesters with their cod catch were having a hard time selling it. And consequently, some got dumped. So is there a requirement for increased capacity in the processing sector before any increase can be for the quota?
Okay, so last year, when all the plants were buying, when crab was over and all the plants were buying, the processing industry was producing 2,200 metric tons per week of quota weight. So, you know, if we go to 25,000 tons, you're looking at, you know, a 12-week fishery. If we started fishing cod in early July and we finished in September, October, there's no issue, should be no issue, producing 25,000 tons. This year, crab, as we know now, hopefully is going to stay on. I mean, we had about a 10-day delay, far from the 6 weeks. Crab's normally over in late June, early July. So if that's on track, I mean, we should be able to start at the cod earlier in July this year, and then we should be able to catch the 25,000 tons, no problem.
I appreciate the time. Anything else this morning, Alberto?
That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Bye-bye.
Okay, see you. Bye-bye.
Alberto Wareham is the president and CEO at Icewater Seafoods. Let's go to line number 2. Good morning, Katie. You're on the air.
Hi, Patty. How are you?
Doing okay. How about you?
I'm doing all right. I'm someone who helps out down at Tent City at the Colonial Building. I've been following the media coverage from late last week and also listening to your show. We had a pretty rough weekend down there over the weekend, while the headlines were showing Minister Hutton stating that volunteers are impeding the government's ability to convince people that the options available to them are better suited than Tent City. The reality is we had several people accept shelter placements since that statement who were put in notorious for-profit slum shelters, who even in those few days are now back at Tent City. We had a woman who has a lot of medical needs. She's been in and out of hospital. She's been looking for a shelter for quite a while, and she went into one over the weekend, and we brought her food because they aren't fed in that particular shelter. Well, and as of yesterday, she had left again to come back to Tent City because of violence and men upstairs in the women's section, and I guess just a bit of chaos around open drug use and alcohol. We had another gentleman who, NL Housing and Homelessness, offered a placement in a converted motel where it's a pretty good shelter. They could have their own room and bathroom and get 3 meals a day. Instead, the taxi that took him away brought him to a different notorious slum shelter where he was in a room with a bunch of other men, and it was loud. And for the 1 meal a day he received 2 pieces of dry bread and some Cheerios. So that's what we saw over the weekend. I guess some of their photos and stories in their own words are on the Tent City for Change Facebook page. Really, none of that's why I'm calling today. I actually called on Friday because I wanted to talk a bit about harm reduction, and also because the folks that's living at Tent City and myself, we see a lot of the rhetoric from the public, the questions and what the public is saying. And while many of them don't feel comfortable doing media, I'd actually gathered some of their comments that I was hoping to share with your listeners.
Sure. And before we get to that, Katie, we talk about the conditions at emergency shelters, violence and drug use, physical and sexual violence. I mean, have there been issues of violence and drinking and drug use at Tent City as well? Because that's what people report to me. I've only been there once, so I can't speak to it with any first-hand knowledge. But has that not been the case over the course of the last number of months?
Yeah, I'd love to touch on that. So I actually picked that woman up. I know this woman quite well. I've known her for a while. I picked her up myself from the shelter that she chose to leave. I really didn't want her to leave that shelter because I'm worried about her health. She has respiratory issues in addition to other medical issues. Anyways, while we were driving back to Tent City and she was telling me why she left, I asked her that same question. I said, a lot of that exists at Tent City. There are men, there is drug use, and there are people drinking. This individual is not anti-drug or anti-drinking. She's actually one of our residents who's trained in harm reduction. She is trained in how to use naloxone if someone's overdosing. So while she doesn't drink or do drugs herself, she doesn't have anything against that. But what she said was the difference is essentially privacy and community. At Tent City, she has her own tent. So when she wants to she wants to get away from something or a situation, she can go into her own tent and just hang out there and get away from it, whether that's fighting or drug use or whatever. Additionally, with respect to community, she said you kind of know each other. Even if there's some new people passing through there, there are people who've been staying there for quite a while, and they know each other and they take care of each other. So even though she's a woman and she's alone in a tent, she feels safer at Tent City.
Fair enough. And even though a tent doesn't provide much in the way of real security, if it provides even if it's perception, then that's better than being exposed to whatever happened at the emergency shelter she was at. The conversation is getting trickier. There is the concept that the well has been poisoned somewhat by political commentary on this and what have you. But for people who simply do not want any help, and there's obviously people there that are in that circumstance. There are two families that have been in contact with me saying they have a loved one there, and that person does not want any help, period. They're happy enough to live exactly how they're living. If that's the case, do you think there's a time coming where some of these tents and people who are willing to live in the tents or live and to be homeless are going to be moved or should be moved from that site?
Sure. I guess I've heard you bring up that story a couple times, like last week in your shows. And I asked people at site that, again, I don't want to put words in people's mouth. There's a lot of us talking about the people living at Tent City versus them being able to speak for themselves. So I asked them, what have you been offered? Why do you refuse it? Why do some people keep coming back to Tent City? Are you refusing help, which is a lot of what we hear. And people said, first and foremost, we are asking for safe long-term housing. Get it. Complicated, might take a minute. Many of us, I guess what we don't want is to be placed in unsafe shelters and slum shelters. So some shelters are decent. I'm not talking about all shelters, but a lot of them aren't. So that's what they definitely don't want. Refusing help or staying there for the sake of it. People said many of us are seeking help. We have support workers at organizations like Thrive or Stella, who they seek housing support through, mental health and addiction support, and also just other physical health support. So I also see a lot of that rhetoric of folks who don't want help or refuse to be helped. But the reality we've seen is that it's hard to come by. Our province's mental health and addiction services, they're not sufficient. It's not a new news story. I think last week your station reported a really heartbreaking story about a young man named Noah Rowe and how he and his family have been seeking mental health support for the last few years to no avail. And now he's facing weapons charges that are likely directly related to those untreated mental health issues.
Yeah, I had his father on the show. But, and I have no interest in sensationalizing or using hyperbole or exaggerating for any purpose, because it's just not it's not the way I do things. This one family in particular, I know they're telling me the truth because I know the guy. And he sent me a picture of him, and I'll leave out the relation, but him and the person in his family at Tent City, you can tell as clear as day that's where it is. And he's told me in no uncertain terms, he just doesn't want anything. He's happy enough to do what he's been doing for a number of years, and that's to be homeless. Couch to couch, shelter to shelter, those types of things. So I know at least that one story. I can guarantee it's true. So I don't know what we do with that info, but
I don't know. I think I don't know that. I know pretty much everyone down there. I'm not sure which individual you're talking about, but we've had about 100 people cycle through, and some of them for a long time, some of them not for long. I guess what I will say is that so I don't know which family that is in particular, but what some of the residents have told me is that while many of them love their families, they aren't necessarily not everyone has a healthy relationship with their family. And that can happen when people love each other and want to help each other. But a family member might feel like their loved one isn't accepting the type of help that they want, which might be, sobriety or coming to stay with them in their own house. But the folks on the ground feel like they've made the best decision for themselves in that situation. And you know what, there might be one story like that. I'm not saying that. This is it's a huge group of people, and everyone's story is different, but I think the story you're referring to it has to be a one-off, because it's not what I'm seeing on the ground a lot.
I don't know, and I can, I was pretty clear. I haven't been there other than one time. I don't know all the individual stories. I don't pretend to. Before we run out of time, Katie, is there anything specifically you want to get to before we have to go?
Yeah, I guess there's a lot I'd like to get to. A few things that people are seeing are being said about them, which I find really heartbreaking, is why don't you just get a job, and why don't you just quit doing drugs? I didn't really personally want to discuss this because I think everyone deserves access to safe and dignified housing, regardless of if they have a job or not. But folks on the ground asked me to address it, so I will. They want people to know that some of us want to work but are finding it hard to get a job while living in a tent and with no way to shower or keep a regular schedule, and while also living under extreme stress. Additionally, some folks are seniors or nearing that age, or they have disabilities and can't work. So the amount they receive on their old age pension or their disability benefit just hasn't been sufficient for them to find housing. I think if you talk to Seniors NL or Connections for Seniors or other organizations, they'd have other similar stories like that. For those of the folks who are struggling with addiction, and it's not everyone down there, which I see a lot of in the media, they want people to know that many of them do want help, but the support's not there. So there is harm reduction provided at site, including by the Managed Alcohol Program, through the Women's Centre, by SWAP, which provides safe drug-using supplies and life-saving naloxone, and some other stopgap measures that I'd be happy to discuss if we had time, but I'm guessing you don't.
Yeah, not this morning, but we can revisit this at any time, Katie, because there's obviously a lot to it. And harm reduction, I think it's shrugged off in many parts of the country, and all based on political ideology, if I'm being bluntly honest here. Safe injection sites, regulated supply. People are, just take political stance on this. I don't know how anyone's willing to shrug their shoulders and say, oh, well, addiction and overdose and death, well, that's okay. No, because it's not okay. Katie, I do appreciate this. Stay in touch.
Thanks. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye. All right, let's go ahead and take that break. When we come back, I think what we're talking about is the splitting of doses of Eylea and Lucentis. That's one of the treatments, an eye injection for macular degeneration. Imelda's next to talk about that. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Good morning, Imelda. You're on the air.
Hello, Dave. I called in a couple of months ago about the dose splitting of that's used for macular degeneration. Mm-hmm. And I'd just like to remind people to let them know that it was going on and that I had developed a really bad eye infection from the dose splitting medication.
So let me just paint a little clearer picture so people know what we're talking about. Yeah. So we actually had Ken Dix on the program. He's a he's a pharmacist anyway, out in Central. So he became alarmed. I'm going to use the date of 2015 because it looked like doses were being split. And so there's a reason that there's more in the vial than what is necessary for a dose, and he offered some really legitimate background reasons for that. There was a pharmacy in Ontario that distributed these products, both Eylea and Lucentis, and it's the most common treatment for macular degeneration. Around 2 million Canadians suffer with the condition, and the problem at the end of that road is irreversible vision loss. So with the doses were being split, it has an obvious problem, whether it be for contamination or otherwise. So you had a bad infection as a result. Describe what happened.
Well, I had my eye injection on June 2023, and about a week later, I got a severe eye infection, so I had to go in for emergency surgery, and I was told at the time that if they didn't get the infection under control, that they would have to take my eye out. So, I'm so very upset about this, because how many other people have gone through the same thing, and they don't realize didn't realize what was happening to them, or why it happened.
Yeah, and it's the who knew what when, especially at the government level, which looks like they were aware, but yet did nothing about it. So it's time to go back to Mr. Dix too, because he's really good at this and he can really explain the issue. It's against the law, number one. It's not only not recommended that it should not happen, but it actually contravenes Canada's Food and Drugs Act. So it's actually breaking the law. It says quite clearly, and I just pulled it up so I can make sure I was accurate here. No person shall sell any drug that was A, manufactured, prepared, preserved, packaged, or stored under sanitary conditions, or B, is adulterated. You're not supposed to touch it. When it comes out of the manufacturers, it's supposed to be distributed like that and no adjustments to be made. So it's a terrible story. And Mr. Dix, we'll probably get Ken back on here sometime this week. So what's the status of your recovery from the infection, Imelda?
I had a good recovery from it. I had no complaints about that. I mean, it was I can see better than what I did before the infection. But I'm just I just like the story needs to get out there.
I agree.
It needs to be proven. Well, it's proven already. I've done my part. That's all I can do with it. Is I wrote Newfoundland Pharmacy Board, and also I had interviewed with CBC, but the story is held back for whatever reason, which I don't think is right, first nor last. But I'm not very good at this, Dave.
You're doing great. So this is about money. I mean, quite simply, and the overfilling of the vial is actually part of it. It's on purpose. So that's simply part of the packaging. So if someone's getting a vial, and as opposed to using one dose as prescribed and then discarding the rest, apparently they were able to get 4, maybe 5 doses out of the same vial. Consequently, things have been, there's been some infection passed around, and of course you've been the victim on that site, on that size. But now, for the manufacturers, it costs a pretty penny to get these injections, somewhere between $1,500 and $2,000. So there's a lot of money here. We're talking to the hundreds of millions of dollars in Canada alone per year. So this is a big story. I'm glad you brought it forward again this morning.
Yeah, okay then. Okay, that's all. I think that's all I'm going to say on it, because I said it before, and you're doing a really good job of getting it out there. But I'm waiting on the pharmacy board to get back to me, because with the letter I sent to them about my injection. So they can get back. When they get back to me, they now have more information. I just want people to read this story and absorb it and realize what happened, what happened, and what can happen. But this drug is not being used now. But it hasn't been put out to the public.
Which one isn't being used?
Eylea,
which was a Bayer drug.
That's the one. Yeah, that was the one I was getting. But I'm not getting that one now. Now I'm getting the other one.
Lucentis?
No, Lucentis is the one that I was. Wait now, because Lucentis is the one that I was getting. My name. Okay, wait now. My goodness gracious, I'm getting all mixed up here, Dave.
Take your time.
Okay. The drugs the drugs injectable doses of Eylea and Lucentis. I was getting Lucentis. Now I'm getting Eylea.
Okay.
The last couple of treatments I've had, I'm getting that treatment. But that was being investigated also.
Fair enough. Imelda, I really appreciate the time this morning. I'm glad to hear you're doing okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm doing okay. But it's just that people have to put their names out there, too, if they had the same experience as I did.
And they're welcome to call this program, and they should be encouraged to get in touch with the pharmacy board, just like you did.
Yes.
Thank you, Imelda.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye-bye. And, this comes directly from Bayer themselves, and Bayer is the manufacturer of Eylea. So they say quite clearly, standard terms and conditions of the sale, that under no circumstances may a customer multi-dose, compound, or vial split any Bayer product. That's a maddening story, isn't it? There's ATIP requests have been sent in 2015, 2016, and I suppose maybe just in an effort to add another layer to it, we'll see if Mr. Dix is available at some point during this week, because he's got the actual medical background to talk about it much more concisely or comprehensively than I can. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Selena, you're on the air.
Hi, I'm Selena. I'm calling in. This is my first-time caller.
Welcome to the show. Take your time.
I'm calling in for a wrong dismissal at a personal home care.
Okay.
And they're trying to pay me off now. They're trying to pay me $15,000 to keep my mouth shut for wrong dismissal, and I can't get my job back because they hired 2 people in my place.
Okay, so you're speaking out today means that you're not willing to accept the $15,000, period.
No, I'm not. No, I don't want to accept it.
Tell us what happened.
A co-worker put in a complaint about me, saying that I was bullying him. When they done the interviews with all the staff that we were working with that night, nothing came up. It was he lied. But I still lost my job over it.
So, like, bullying is a real catch-all. So he was accusing you of bullying, like how? You were calling them names, or was it physical, or what was the accusation?
I was the president of the union over there, so there was few staff members coming to me to putting in complaints about him. And then I said, well, I don't know what to do. So we went to the management. The management didn't do anything. So I said, well, I'll go to the union, my union rep in the morning. And he overheard me say that. When I said I was going to the union rep, he went to the management the next morning and said I was bullying him and he was scared that he was going to lose his job. But I was just going to go to and see what we can do. I didn't know nothing about the union, so this is my first time in the union, so I said I'll go to the union, see what I can do. He overheard it and went to the union and went to the management and said that I was a bully. And then I got called in the office. I never had no write-ups, nothing. The next day, nothing. So they let me go for 2 weeks on paid leave to investigate. The union got involved, and I got fired through the mail. I never even got fired into a meeting. They put the letter in through the mail.
And so with the letter that says you're fired, was there also the offer of the $15,000 at that point, or when did that come?
That came up there on there last week, the 15th. They settled for $15,000.
Okay, and not to pry too deep into your world, but what do you mean they settled? You said you fired me without cause, I want a cash payout, or how did it arrive at some sort of negotiated sum?
That's what the union was, because I didn't have anything to do with it. I didn't even go to arbitration. I never even got called in for that.
So where to now?
I want to take it further. I want to go further. Like, I shouldn't be paid out. I shouldn't have to keep my mouth shut for what happened. They hired 2 people in my place. They're hiring foreigners instead of Newfoundlanders. So I was a high-paid employee there. I was getting over $20 an hour. So they couldn't. So they had to come up with something.
So where are you going to go, though? Taking it further, and maybe you don't know what's available to you, or you're looking for some help?
I don't know what's available. Yes, I'm looking for some help.
Okay. Well, there's a couple of places that you can turn, and it's difficult when you're operating as a solo individual. I don't know if the union's willing to do more with you or for you, but you can turn to somewhere like the Labour Relations Board, which can potentially take it on and have an evaluation of what happened. But I'd let the union still run this on your behalf, because these things are tricky to navigate as one person, as an individual. So is the union willing to continue to work for you?
Yes.
Okay. Well, then do exactly that. They've got the horsepower. They've got the knowledge. So I would stick with them and make sure that they did everything possible. And to keep you in the loop, explain to you exactly where they're going and why they're doing it.
Yeah, because I don't get no calls from them either.
Well, you should get right on the phone with them today.
Okay. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
No problem at all. You keep me in the loop. Let me know how it's going.
Okay. Thank you, Patty.
You're welcome, Selena. Good luck.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. All right, let's keep going. Line number 5. Lorraine, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Hi there.
Lorraine Quinn calling from Corner Brook. I'm a very proud hockey nan today. I was in St. John's to watch the Don Johnson Memorial Cup. I want to give a big shout-out to Mount Pearl Blades and my twin grandsons, Ethan and Nicholas Moore. They won their first 3, but lost the next 3. All 5 teams played tremendous hockey. I've been watching them play since they were 5. Now they're 21. This was their last tournament.
So did you say they were playing for Mount Pearl?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And I want to mention they get their love of hockey from their grandfather, Ed O'Quinn. He played for the Royals. And the Corner Brook Royals won 4 hurdles in the 1960s. And I want also to send out a big bouquet to the girl that sang the Ode to Newfoundland and the Canadian National Anthem. She did a great job.
Terrific.
Yeah, and I want to mention that the boys put away their hockey sticks and picked up their fire hoses. They're both firemen.
Wow, good for them. That's a nice early start for a great career, too, as a firefighter when you're only 21. Good for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went in and had a look at a game last Thursday afternoon for a little bit. It was the Caps and the Vipers. And, I mean, thinking back to playing junior myself, you know, it's just great to see that there's still so many good hockey players playing at that level and staying home. So that's terrific stuff. What are their first names again?
Ethan and Nicholas Moore.
Ethan and Nicholas Moore. Good for them. Bit of juniors fun. Getting to play in the Don Johnson is also a bit of a thrill, you know. It's one thing to be looking at the same teams all year long, then you get a chance to play against Antigonish and Kent and Kensington, so it's terrific.
Yeah, yes.
So tell me about, were you with Ed back in the 60s when he was playing for the Royals, winning the hurler?
Yes, he passed away 10 years ago.
Oh, no.
At the age of 75. He would be 85 now.
So were you guys boyfriend and girlfriend or married or what have you when he was playing senior?
Yes. Well, we were divorced later, but we met when we were 15 and 16 when he came in from the Cardroy Valley to play hockey.
Okay.
And we were together, I think, around 26 years.
Now, would you go watch him play at the Humber Gardens?
Yeah. Oh, yes. I love all sports, and my son, two sons played, and their dad played, and now my grandsons are playing. So.
Yeah, and my boys played, and my nephews play. It's excellent. Not only hockey, too, a bunch of different sports. Lorraine, so how did you get in here? Who came in with you from Corner Brook?
Oh, my daughter Judy and her boyfriend. The three of us drove in together.
Fantastic. I'm really pleased for your grandsons. I'm glad you enjoyed the weekend. Anything else you want to say this morning?
No, I just want to say I'm very proud of them, and I love them very much, both of them.
I'm sure they love Nanny right back. Do they call you Nanny or Grandma?
Nan. Hockey Nan.
Hockey Nan. I love that.
Yeah.
Before I let you go, Lorraine, you say you're a sports fan. Do you watch sports on TV?
Oh, yes.
What do you watch?
Oh, I'm watching the hockey and the baseball, the Leafs and the... Yeah.
Big game for the Leafs tonight. Could be all over. Hopefully they can pull it out.
They'll take that tonight.
You think so? Yeah, the Jays. Nice to see him win yesterday because it's been ugly.
Oh, yes, right.
It's nice to speak with you, Lorraine. Thanks for the call.
Yes, I think I've talked to you a few times over the years, Eddie, and it's nice to speak with you again.
Always a pleasure. Stay in touch.
Okay, my love. Take
Bye,
care.
Lorraine. You're welcome.
Bye-bye now. Bye.
Here we go. It's good stuff there. Watch the grandsons play a little junior at the Don. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Yeah, and yes, the Leafs game is tomorrow night. Okay, let's keep going. Line number 2. Tom, you're on the air.
Morning, Patrick. How are you this morning?
Doing grand. Thanks. How about you?
Not too bad. Quick one this morning, Patty. As you're probably aware, I've written a couple of dozen books, and a couple of plays, and a few dinner theaters and things. And I was going through my files the other day, and I came across something we did back when Roger Grimes was premier. He gave us a grant to hire a bunch of people with disabilities to write and star in a production, a play. And of course we did it. We hired some people with disabilities, and we put off a play which was very good. And I thought maybe it's a good time to bring it back to life. So we're having a casting call on May 2nd at 7:30 at the Hub. And anybody who's interested in acting or helping with us, helping with, some script aid or set design and things like this, I'd encourage them to come out. It'll be a lot of fun. You don't have to have any experience in this. It's just a little production dealing with some of the issues that people with disabilities face on a daily basis, and it's a lot of fun. And nobody expects you to move from here to Broadway with this thing. So if you're interested, you got nothing to do, and you want to do a bunch of productions this summer at the Hub, then we'd love to see you.
So, Tom, the casting call will be for people with disabilities as opposed to people playing as an actor?
With and without.
With or without?
With and without as actors and actors. Yeah, with or without. We have some of the cast members have disabilities or in wheelchairs. One cast member in particular has CP. One is blind. It all takes place in an airport while the plane is delayed. So we do have some able-bodied people, people without disabilities, and people with disabilities. So, I particularly would like to get somebody with CP, and I particularly would like to get a blind person. I'd already spoke to the people over at the CNIB, and they will be sending some people along, but the more the merrier. And, there's about 16 people, I think, in this production, but we do need help with the other parts of it. So, I'd love to get people to come out, and it's going to be a lot of fun. People are really going to enjoy this. And they're going to make a few dollars, too, because what we're going to do is after the food is paid for, we'll distribute what we get at the door to the cast and crew. So it's a chance to make a few bucks as well.
Terrific. So, Tom, give us the playbill summary of the play itself. What's the story?
Well, it all starts, and I don't want to give away the ending of this, but it all starts at in an airport, St. John's Airport, where a man is being interviewed for the maintenance supervisor's job. He's in a wheelchair, and obviously he's being treated not for his skills and his abilities, but the fact that he's in a wheelchair. Then he goes out, and they all sit in the waiting area of the airport, and they start relating stories about issues they're facing, and it's comedic. One of the guys is a comedian, and he's going to a show, and he's a guy with CP, and he does his stand-up routine, and a bunch of those things, And in the end, you're rather surprised to discover who the person who was interviewing for the maintenance job actually is. I don't want to give that away because that's a key part of the story. So, but it's a lot of fun, and some of the issues, of course, that we face every day as people with disabilities. And it's comedic and it's serious. And, I think there's a situation there, too, where a woman is with her kids and she's leaving a bad relationship. So, you'll laugh and you may even cry. I think Roger was at one of the productions and he loved it. And he said that you got a lower premium crying. So it's a bit of fun, and I think people will enjoy it.
Where are you going to put it off? At the Hub or one of the theatres?
At the Hub itself, yeah. We'll do it right at the Hub. We did it at the Hub the last time. We did a couple of productions. We did a few in Carbonear. And I'm old and I can't remember, but I think we did a couple of more somewhere else. So, I think that's about the limit of it. I think we did maybe a half a dozen productions of it. So we'd like to be able to do the same this time, every couple of Saturday nights at the Hub. And, and if somebody wants, after we get going and they want us to take us on the road, then all you do is call and we'll certainly do that.
It sounds terrific. So when is the casting call formally?
Thursday, 7:30 at the Hub, the 2nd of May.
Sounds good. Break a leg, Tom. Keep us in the loop when you get the production off the ground.
We will so. Thank you very much for listening to me this morning.
My pleasure, Tom. Thanks for the call. All right, there we go. Bye-bye. That sounds like a fun opportunity for someone who's so inclined. Let's go to line number 1. Good morning, Mike. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy.
Welcome to the show, Mike.
How are you?
Excellent. Thank you. How about you?
Not bad. I'm calling this morning to talk about cell phones, particularly cell phones in general and in school. First of all, where do we see them? And for your listeners here now, they should be able to imagine quite easily. We see people in the malls every day. Their heads are down facing to the screen as they trudge along, sometimes almost knocking into others and even banging into people. Numerous occasions I've witnessed, I'm sure your listeners, Patty, have seen pedestrians using crosswalks while never looking left or right to watch for oncoming traffic. Like zombies, they're totally oblivious, I should say, to what's happening around them. And as for people who are attending school or professional sporting events, many eyes are often focused on cell phone screens. It's just everywhere you go, people are fixated with them. Phones and the apps on them are addictive, and it perturbs me and upsets me when I witness these devices being used behind the wheel of a car. And for those who are listening, you have seen people at these intersections. If you haven't seen the phone, you can tell by their body language that they are on it, looking downward, or they're very delayed in proceeding after light changes from red to green. This morning, I'll change the topic a little tiny bit, but it's still talking about cell phones. The Ontario government is about to introduce legislation to limit the use of cell phones in schools. They're talking about having them turned off recess time and lunchtime, and restricting them to all media sites and any school network or school-owned devices, i.e. that would be, I assume, something like Chromebooks, so they can keep them also away from videos, movies, sports games, etc. Cell phones, smartphones have a negative impact on students. They're a distraction. They're harmful for their health. Increased academic misconduct, isolation, anxiety, sleeplessness, and the body and mind is becoming lazier. The notifications, messages, and social media alerts are a distraction to students from the present moment. They also lead to a huge disconnect from others, desocialization. It affects their eyesight, sleep, exercise, loneliness, weight gain, or overall physical and mental health. Phones distract students, and the students have access to questionable content. It encourages cheating, and it is an instrument for cyberbullies. In July 26, 2003, the United Nations Agency for Education and Science is pushing for classrooms around the world to ban smartphones. They argue that the devices distract from learning, they're bad for students' mental health, well-being, and a host of privacy issues. And it has been shown that it takes students up to 20 minutes to refocus after they have been distracted. Removing smartphones from schools was found to improve learning outcomes. They also lead to a disconnect. That's usually students are no longer socializing. Cell phones are banned in many schools across Europe now: China, Australia, New Zealand, parts of the United States. Looks like Ontario is going to do something here now, as well as Quebec. Which brings me to an American psychologist, Jonathan Haidt, which is spelled Haidt. He's an American psychologist, as I said, who has written many books. The most recent one, which is the #1 bestseller, New York Times, called The Anxious Generation. And in the book, he talks about the rewiring of childhood as an epidemic of mental health. And he goes back in time to 2010 when he talks about rates of depression, anxiety, self-harm, and suicide have risen sharply, more than doubling actually. And a substantial amount of their attention is spent monitoring or worrying about social events. He states that cell phones are eliminating or displacing play and personal socialization at an unimaginable scale. But then a couple of things have changed since 2008, he talks about. The app stores come in 2009. They push for notifications coming out. So now you have this thing in your pocket with thousands or millions of companies trying to get your attention and trying to keep you on your app. 2010, the front-facing camera comes out, Instagram as well. So the environment suddenly changes. Now the iPhone is not a tool, or not just a tool, it's a tool of mass distraction. He makes a number of recommendations, two of which that no smartphones should be no smartphones before high school, and no social media for students under 16 years of age or children. Which brings me to a couple of statements made by the Minister of Education here, and a statement meant by the head of the Newfoundland and Labrador Teachers Association around a month ago. In an email statement to the CBC News, the Department of Education said it's not having discussions about a cell phone ban, and that cell phone use in the classroom is up to the discretion of the school or individual teachers. To me, that statement in itself simply shows the government has no leadership and poor advisors within the Department of Education. And it's clear that phones are disruptive in classrooms, and Newfoundland and Labrador is a statement that the Teachers Association President Trent Langdon made, but it doesn't warrant a ban. He states that this is a teaching responsibility, which it is, said Langdon. I agree with him there. And he said it's incumbent on schools, but also incumbent on families to teach the responsibilities with cell phones. And I say, if it is incumbent on the schools, when are the students going to be informed about the hazards of cell phones use And if policies put in place province-wide are not followed, what kind of consequences will follow? Administrators and teachers are grappling with the issue each period, every day. To me, there should be a policy for all schools in this province and identical measures put in place if these rules are not followed.
Well, it's the only way it's going to work. Unless there's a across-the-board standard, then if we're going to piecemeal it, then which school, which teacher is going to want to take it on? Because they don't have a backstop at that point. So they'll be the bad guy, when in fact they'd be the good guy, but they'd be isolated. And so consequently, many of them would be loath to do what is required, via legislation, like you rightfully said. BC, Quebec, and now Ontario. There is a trend here, and hopefully it follows across the country. All of the things you point to regarding mental health and anguish and distraction, these are all well-documented issues. This is not just, selectively plucking one example or another. I mean, there's studies being done here currently in this country, including at McGill University, about your actual brainwaves and the impact of social media, which is a huge detriment to any ability to absorb the curriculum, to be well-adjusted, to be socialized. All of these things that you point out, Mike, are 100% on point as far as I'm concerned. And so let's see it. Look, parents are going to be mad. So be it. Students will be mad. So be it. I mean, these are the growing pains of change, right? Change is the only constant. And sometimes change is not good.
No, it's not. And this is the fight that we have to fight. This can no longer be ignored. All right. In my opinion, this is just one aspect of our education system that's having us going in a backward trend instead of a forward trend.
Yeah, they're all connected somehow, whether it be the decline in math, science, or reading scores, which is not just pandemic-related since 2003, whether it be the issue of chronic absenteeism, whether it be distractions in school, and the reasons as to why so many students are not going to school. They're all not 100% direct lines drawn between them all, but they are interconnected, obviously. Mike, I'm late for the break, but I'll give you the final thoughts quickly before I do have to go.
Well, thank you, Patty. I appreciate it. And for the parents out there who are listening, there are a number of ways in which you can help monitor your children on cell phones. Limit them to daily amounts of time. I'm requesting that the government of this province, the Department of Education, act, and not just say you're going to do something. Act now. This is an emergency. These are our children who are growing up. Their mental health is being affected by it. Start making some decisions instead of saying, we'll go into a think tank and we'll do this. This is a pretty easy thing to do, and something should be put in place for September, not 2 years down the road.
Fair.
Act now.
Thanks,
Thank
Mike.
you very much, Patty, for your time. I appreciate it. Have a wonderful day.
The same to you, Mike.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate your time. Bye-bye. All right, let's go ahead and take a break. When we get back, Peter Budgell. He's in the queue. He's the Executive Director of the Exploits Community Employment Group. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3 and say good morning to the Executive Director of Exploits Community Employment. That's Peter Budgell. And good morning, Peter. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you this morning?
I'm grand. Thank you for asking. How about you?
Oh, I'm not better than the weather, put it that way.
That's not too tough these days.
Yeah, really. Patty, I wanted to call in just to try to provide some clarification, I guess, on some issues that have been in the news lately, and a couple of people have been on your show and putting some information out there, namely Minister Byrne and Federal Minister Bolsonaro was also on your show, talking about supported employment and the top-up funding that's being provided to the Newfoundland government to support that. Let me start off by saying, I guess, and I was surprised to hear it as well, when Minister Bolsonaro was on, he mentioned on your show that the provincial governments right across the country and the territories were notified in March of 2023 that the cuts were coming for the top-up portion of the federal transfers, and that amounted to, for Newfoundland, about $16.9 million. We, as a supported employment corporations right across the province, were not notified of any of this until February of this year. And, Minister Burr came on, and I was just looking at another release this morning that, where he said he had been keeping the SENL corporations right across the province involved in this all along, but that's not quite right. We didn't hear about it until February the 26th of this year. So we were kind of caught off guard too. So we think that somehow or other we got placed in the middle of this between the two levels of government, and we were expected to carry that load. I want to quantify or clarify, I guess, for want of a better term, that supported employment across Newfoundland and Labrador has been here for 38 years, and that's a long time in existence around here, around the whole province of Labrador, and there's not one community in the province of Newfoundland and Labrador who don't have access to supported employment one way or another. When we look at the numbers that we actually deal with, clients alone, and these are clients with developmental or cognitive delays, clients alone, we have in excess of 1,000 when we talk with people on the autism spectrum as well, which there are 9 pilots now across the province that are trying to look after those folks as well. And when we include in that, there's a number of support workers or job trainers, if you want to call them, that work with these people, and that amounts to another upwards of 400 people. So the effects of this, you're hitting, somewhere in the area of 1,500 people that are being affected by this right across the province. There are 15 SENL corporations across the province, as well as 5 satellites. So there's not an area, as I said, that's not affected by this. And when you're looking at, and they're looking at $3.5 million, basically is what's being cut from our particular programs, or that's what's proposed to be cut. That amounts to upwards of, about 35%. So, we're looking at 350 to 400 people that will probably be affected by this in one way or another, and some possibly losing their jobs altogether. And we just learned recently from a letter that came out on the 19th, and by the way, the letter didn't come out till after 5:30 on a Friday afternoon, advising that there were going to be some drastic cuts, and some of the employment corporations may actually cease to exist. So this is all brought on to us, very, very quickly, and it's not just the corporations in the bigger cities that are getting affected by this. When you look at the rural side of things, all these other corporations, they are a very, very important aspect of employment and of the social network in these communities. And, for a government to look at this, and I don't know what the thought process is, it's a direct federal transfer, but if this money is taken out of the system, these people that are working in the system now have no choice for a lot of them but to go back on income support and government supports.
Yeah, so we're talking about the Labour Market Transfer Agreement, and of course that has been an important federal program for a number of years. The warning signs were there that there was going to be a reduction, and that would be specifically inside the Workforce Development Funding Program. So this budget, there's a reduction of some $636 million, I believe the number is. Last year there was $3.5 billion in labour market transfer monies flowing from the feds to the provinces. There is $142 million on the table in this federal budget, but the reduction of 16.8 or 16.9 is very real. What I heard Minister Boissonnault say is basically that the government of the province was told, and they were told fairly specifically, that the reduction would be around 16.8 or 16.9 million. And as a result, Minister Boissonnault says the province had ample opportunity to backfill this reduction in the labour market transfer monies. So that's kind of how I heard it. So whether or not Minister Byrne did what you think should have been done is, ongoing updated information between his department and you and Sean Wiltshire, for instance, like at Avalon Employment Incorporated. Apparently that's where the communication gap is. Is that a fair assessment?
That is a really fair assessment, Paddy. And the sad part, or the downside of it, we're getting calls here at our office, and I'm sure pretty well every corporation office across the province is getting calls from individuals and families wondering what's going to happen and what we're doing about all this. And it's coming back, okay, that this is your fault that this is all happening, but we were not in the loop. So we didn't know until February of this year that anything was going on, and then all of a sudden things started to happen. And it seems kind of funny because also in February, the government commissioned Deloitte to do a survey of supported employment operations right across the province. That report was supposed to be, or did go into the government around the 25th of March or somewhere along that area, but we still haven't heard anything about it. What went on, what the recommendations were, or anything along that line. And it almost seems a little suspicious that all of a sudden now they got this report, not telling anybody what's in the report, and they're looking and sending a letter out to us, at the 11th hour, saying there's probably going to be a 35% cut in your operations, with some corporations ceasing to operate altogether. So, it seems suspect at best, but we wanted to make sure that people knew just how big supported employment actually is right across the province and how many people actually depend on it. Because like I said, we've been here for 38 years, and in those 38 years, we've grown, substantially across the province, so that right now and in Labrador, there's not a community, as I said, that doesn't have access to supported employment in one shape or another.
Okay, so Sean Wiltshire says that this probably means that the autism support program is going away. In real terms, what does it mean for you folks? Is it the same consequence?
It would be the same consequence. We're one of the corporations that has the autism support pilot as well. So, if that goes away, of course, it's going to go away here as well. And, put on top of that some of the other clients that are going to be affected. And I mean, if we look just at our corporation, we handle 60-plus communities just in our coverage area, everywhere from Buckins to Leading Tickles to the Conagra Peninsula and right out as far as Lewisport and Norris Arm and that area. So, there's a big area, and a lot of the corporations are spreading out that way as well. And, the Avalon has its clientele there, as does Visions in Mount Pearl, and even Vera Perlin has a supported employment component in their group. So it affects people right across the province in Labrador, and there's going to be hard hit, and it's going to be hard felt by a lot of people. And again, I think there's somebody got to stop and think, well, okay, if they're taking 350 to 400 people out of the system, where are they going to go? They're going to go back to income support or some other government support along that line, whereby they're not now paying taxes. They're not paying back into society the way everybody is there doing now. And, their standard of life, standard of living goes right back to square one again, which they've worked so hard to come out of.
Yeah, and there might be money coming in the door in the form of income support, but there's not that ongoing commitment to try to keep them in or put them into the workforce to begin with, which are two entirely different things. You're right to point out tax base implications and what have you. Peter, I appreciate the time. It's really unfortunate. Very quickly before I go, do I recall correctly that the province has said that they would put forward 6 months for the backstop money for your organizations?
Yes, they did so, and that came out on the 25th of March. I think we were advised of that, or somewhere around their area, that they would carry the programs up till the end of September, till they try to get all this figured out. But then when we get a letter coming out on the 19th of April saying that, okay, we're going to start cutting. So what are we left to think? I don't know, and I don't think anybody else knows.
That doesn't sound like it. I mean, because you or Sean Wiltshire would know if there's anyone who would know. Peter, appreciate the time. Keep us in the loop.
Appreciate your time, Paddy. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir. Bye-bye. It's Peter Budgell. He's the Executive Director of Exploits Community Development. Let's go to line number one. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, yes. I just wanted to say about that caller that called in about the cell phones. Mm-hmm. He was on point 100%. Something don't be done now. As far as I'm concerned, they're toxic to our young generation. That's all I got to say, Paddy. Thank you so much.
I appreciate your time. Thank you. Bye-bye. The cell phone can be extremely helpful, obviously, right? You got the world's worth of information in the palm of your hand. The problem is, just like every other pendulum, it's really swung so far that, they're all consuming, and they're overwhelming, and they're littered with all sorts of problematic platforms. Social media was a great concept, but the way it's been executed, I think we've gone the other way. It's not as beneficial as much as compared to how harmful it can be. But in school, it's just a different kettle of fish. You're in school for a reason. And if the teacher says, okay, we're going to do this particular course load and use the cell phone for this application, okay. But other than that, they should be put away. Someone also said via email, and I should have mentioned this right after the preamble, she said, would I be willing to, and I think it came as a form of a dare or a challenge, would I be willing to include teachers in that group that should not be on social media during school hours? Yes. Absolutely, because they're there to teach, just like students are there to learn, or that's the thought process. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go. Line number 5. Good morning, Ralph. You're on the air.
Hello, it's Paddy.
Yes, sir.
Ralph Strickland calling from St. Pies, Paddy.
Welcome to the show, Ralph.
Thank you. What I'm calling you about is my health. Well, healthcare. My health. I had cancer on my ears in 2018. I had removed, but there's a growth came back, and I've been trying to get in to see a dermatologist. My doctor sent in a referral, and I can't get in till October.
And that's probably even quick. I got a referral to a dermatologist a while back, and my referral turnaround time was 15 months.
Oh my!
Like what?
So I you know, because it's getting sore now, and I don't know what the hell. I don't know where to go, like what to do about it, and because I know, you know, and I'm taking Advil and that for to get my side of my head is starting to get the pain. So, but I'm stuck. I say like I'm at a rock and a hard place, and they call it. And there's no. The doctor in St. John's, his secretary, told me that they're doing October last year's now.
Wow.
Are we that far behind? For Christ's sake, like imagine. I don't know what the. You know, and the same thing with a colonoscopy. I've requested one because it's over 6 years now, and I'm supposed to have one every 5 years. I've been in August last year, and I still haven't got an appointment. So I don't even know. Like if I had it back again, I would never move back to Newfoundland. I'm guarantee you that much.
Well, I don't know what the wait time is like in other provinces for dermatologists, but what I do know is that there's very few of them in the province, period. I'm not so sure there's even a dermatologist outside the Avalon Peninsula, is there?
Not that I know of.
I don't think so.
No. I go see the doctor in the Village Mall. That's where. And I have, like, he's my doctor. Like, I've been going to him for other skin tags and that, but I still can't get in. There's nothing, and there's no emergency. She told me, my doctor out here told me to keep phoning every day in case of cancellation. And I went, yeah. So I did phone, and she said, well, if there's cancellation, you're not going to be on the top of the list anyway. So I guess there's no. No, this area too, like out here, there's a lot of cancer in St. Bride's. Like you wouldn't believe the amount of people that are having problems, and it's not just to take a 20-minute ride to go into the doctors. Like it's 2.5 hour drive from here to St. Bride's to the Village Mall. So it's and every time we go in, like the gas gets more and more expensive. Like freaking. And I try to get if I go in for one thing, I'd like to get both done at the same time because your day is gone and $100 worth of gas.
Did you ever see an oncologist when you had that last growth removed?
I did. Someone in Guelph, they cut it off, and there was cancer. They cut it out, and they cut a piece out of my ear, and it's almost the same thing that's come back a little farther away from where that one was. Like it looks like the same because it was starting to bleed, but this one is not bleeding yet. But most of them. But I'm just thinking, like I had to go. But I lived in Kitchener at the time. That's why I had it done in Guelph, and they took it off and cut the piece out and sent it away, and it was cancer.
Well, when there's things that we think we can do or advise, and we're happy to offer that on the show. But when we're talking about wait times to see a specialist, so many people are in the exact same boat, including me. I've got a little skin tag that I would like to see if a dermatologist should or would advise me getting it removed, and I can't. 15 months.
No, that's no way. That there's nothing you can do about it. I heard there's such thing as a on-call dermatologist.
I don't know.
I don't know. Someone, the doctor's secretary in St. John's told me that there is they can get one emergency dermatologist.
So that would require presenting at the emergency room, being evaluated by the doctor on site as to whether or not there was an emergency to call in a dermatologist. Is that what that means?
Yeah, no, it's and the same way my doctor out here, I wanted to get see her about seeing something else, and she said I'll phone you. And next month I'm waiting for a phone call. Can't even get in Vicentia now. I don't know. Like, so everything. I mean, I don't mind getting a phone call if she can do something about it.
Yeah, of course.
I don't know what the which way to go from here. There's so much stuff going on and that's why Premier Ferry said about cancer. There's a lot of cancer in Newfoundland. Well, I guess there's going to be a lot more if they can't get someone to do anything about it.
Yeah, well, we just talked about it this morning, the women in central Newfoundland that need cervical cancer screening, and apparently there's a pretty significant backlog there as well, and consequently, people are showing up with late-stage cancer, and it's one of the most preventable cancers that is out there. So are you willing to go through the time-consuming and frustrating emergency room visit to see whether or not there's such a beast as a on-call dermatologist for emergencies? Because what I will do is I'll find out if that's actually a thing and talk about it on the show. So if it is, would you be willing to do that?
Yeah, I don't care where it is. I just want to know if it's not cancer, I'll just put polysporin on and be happy with it. But if it's cancer, I'd like to get rid of it because it's not going to go away on its own.
Probably not. Let me see what I can find out, Ralph.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All the best.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. All right, let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Gerard, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. It's Gerard. Patty, I'd just like to let you know I've been everywhere and I still did not get any help for home care.
I'm trying to recall the circumstances here. So do you have some and need more, or you have none at all?
I don't have any.
Okay.
And it's all to do where I'm 65, and this is a big issue. And to anybody else out there who got the same problem, I'd say there is. It's a big issue, yeah. I don't need any more. I just need what I had.
And so why was
6 hours, that's all.
Why was it taken away?
Because I'm 65. Do you want me to pay this fair amount of money that that I can't afford? Be honest. I'm not hiding anything, you know.
Because for most, unless you are children or adults with disabilities or some short-term support upon being discharged from hospital, basically the home support program is for people 65 plus.
Well, if that's that means, Patty, I got a good case. Yeah. Because they're saying that once you come 65, that you got to pay this money. I'd like to see, Patty, be honestly, like I said to the person that works with you, that I called everybody will tell, somebody else will tell you to call somebody else. And be honest, like I'm at the end of the rope. I don't know which way to go. I do have a disability. I'm very independent as much as I can, but when it comes to, that's why I'd like to talk to you about it off here, you know what I mean? But you're a busy man. But, Patty, it's just that I cannot risk myself all the time cooking over a stove. Besides, my sight is impaired. I took grandma seizures in my day. And my right hand, I got a light, I suppose they could say, I hope it's not Parkinson's, but it shakes, But I try. But I do need the help, and I'm not trying to be, trying to get something that I don't need.
I understand, and I'm sorry that it's happening to you, Gerard. And my off-air hours, I'm not going to complain because no one cares, is just up to my absolute neck, and that's the unfortunate reality for me.
And I heard there this morning, about this, about people having problems getting doctors. I mean, what the gentleman was just talking about. I got, waiting to get in for something else, and I only need this bit of care, and I mean, knowing the guy who I spoke to over at the government, he just won't help. He said that's the rules.
Yeah, and when we interpret the rules, literally black and white, no exemptions, no case-by-case analysis about what's best for the person and what's best for the province's pocketbook, without question, if your next option becomes being placed in an institution like a personal care home or long-term care facility, then that's going to cost us more. It's not going to be as good as what you would be able to.
I don't want to be in that. No, I don't need that. No, thanks be to God. No. You'd think they would just give me what I need. I mean, I worked hard my life, and I've tried to be independent. And when I lost my partner, that was it. She had a disability, and we both made things work. But it's let's say if it was Christmas, I wouldn't be able to do a turkey. I only have to help a courtesy person who do things from time to time for me, and I really appreciate her help. But I mean, when it comes to every day, I just can't see the stuff on the, when something is frozen, it's hard, and I do try. You think, I talked to her in my MHA, he won't change anything. It's like you get the real runaround.
I understand your concern, Gerard. I appreciate you making time for the show this morning. Hopefully someone's going to hear your plea and do what's required here.
Yeah, and I mean, Patty, what about appeal? Can you appeal this stuff? Can you look into that to me? And something else, Patty, do you ever have lawyers on your show?
Seldomly. Why?
Oh, well, you know about remember, I think you know what about my partner is deceased, and I'm trying to get her buried, and her sister hangs up the phone every time I calls, and I gave them her social insurance number to bury her when she passed away in 2022. And I got that to deal with, and I'm dealing with people that don't want to listen, and it's a big issue. She's in her home, and she's supposed to be buried in Avondale, and it's a big issue. She will not bury her, and she won't let me know when she's going to bury her. And she lived here with me in my home for 31 and a half years.
Yeah, I can't get too deeply involved in that particular family issue.
I'm just letting it, cause I just want to know. I'm not afraid, but I'm at the situation now. I know I'm a very private person, but when someone gives me the runaround, I know, and I'm trying to keep things decent like yourself. I understand, but I told somebody at VOCM about the situation. But if you ever have a lawyer on there, I'll have to listen because I can't afford to get a lawyer. I just want the girl buried. She's been in her home now since 2022, and I just want to put in the ground with her father.
And so, where is the body at the moment?
In her house.
Wait,
in an urn.
Oh, so she was cremated.
Oh, yes, geez, yes.
Yeah, I was kind of not following the story in its entirety.
Oh, no.
Okay, anyway, Gerard, I got to get going to another call, but I appreciate your time.
Okay, Patty, I'll call up about the home care next week. I'll be listening, buddy. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Let's keep rolling here. Let's go to line number 4. Mike, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Morning.
I can't tap that one. But anyway... I'm calling about another ATIP request that I had. I put in a request to the Justice Department to find out if it was legal for Eastern Health to make an agreement with the Commerce Group that all the money that's collected in the tills from the cafeterias and restaurants, everything that's owned by government across the island, not only the hospitals, but also Confederation Building or anywhere where there's a cafeteria and that stuff. All this money goes into the Commerce's bank account. And all that money includes the HST and that, taxes and whatever. So why, and what gives the CEO the authority to reach a contract with them and the Minister of Health Services? Do they have the authority in their mandate to authorize such a deal where contractors have to have POs and requisitions and whatever in order to get paid? But when they're taking government money, which is now in the government's possession, take that money and put it into their own bank account, which is also HST tax dollars. How do the government get it back and whatever? And I'm trying to find out if this is legal. And the deputy minister looked at my request and said that they have no records responsible to the above noted request, and that basically they won't say whether it's legal or illegal or whatever. They won't comment on it. Now, to me, no comment is as good as basically saying that no, it is not legal, because if it was legal, they wouldn't be long coming out and saying, oh yes, this is legal, this is okay. There's something going on here, as far as I'm concerned. There's skullduggery in the works that, of why this money goes directly into a contractor's bank account, whereas nowhere else in government or anywhere else does this exist. And the big thing with me there too is like the taxes. Why are we paying Compass Group to give us back our money and then charging us when the money goes into the Compass bank account is also into the contract that we have to pay the Compass's bank fees. So why are we paying Compass Group banking fees and administrative fees and then a percentage on the overall amount of sales and for money that we already got in the tills in our bank account of the government? None of it makes sense of why this is being done other than they're hiding the income of the Compass Group. They're taking this as income. They're not giving it back to the government. Then when you go to look to see what they're getting paid, we don't know what they're getting paid. It's all done under the table, under secrecy, secret and confidential files. Nobody will answer a question. Tom Osborne especially is hiding all of this information, keeping it away from the public, and we all have a right to know where all of this money is going to and how much money is leaving this province through contractors. And not only Compass Group, there's some other contractors too. So where can we get the answers to? If the minister don't answer, the Justice Department don't answer, health services don't answer, we're not given any answers whatsoever. And I'm trying to work on to get the opposition to put some of these questions into the House to the minister. But that's not very easy either. But it seems like everybody wants to shy away from it. It's there, right in front of everybody. Everybody knows what's going on, but nobody will do anything. So anyway, I'd like to get your thoughts on it.
Well, we've had this conversation many, many times. I don't know why we can't get fundamental answers to fundamental questions. I mean, government contracts, the letting of contracts, how procurement works, how the successful bid was selected. I mean, these are all very fundamental issues. I've asked, you've heard me, I've asked directly of Health Services, directly of the Minister, all of these Compass-related matters. We've had them on to talk about Teledoc. We've had them on to talk about 811 services. I can't remember the name of the company behind that at this moment. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Mike, I am late for the news, but I appreciate the update and the time.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye. Will I take another one, Dave, or am I going right to the news? What do you want me to do? Take that one-on-one? Okay, let's go. Line number one. Robert, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you?
Great. Thank you. How about you?
Good, sir.
Good.
I'll keep this short. My son recently moved to Mount Pearl, and his cat is missing. He moved it to an apartment last Wednesday, and that last Wednesday evening he let it out, and it hasn't been seen since. The cat is coal black. Cat's name is Rudy, and we're reaching out where we can to hopefully get it back.
So lost in Mount Pearl. Any specific area you want to point us to?
Yeah, Penmore Drive, sir.
Okay. Coal black cat gone for a little bit. Everyone's getting a bit stressed. Is it an indoor cat or an outdoor cat to begin with?
A bit of each. Mostly in, but out quite a bit too.
Fair enough. Fingers crossed. You want to give out a number or something, Robert?
Yeah, my phone number, sir, is 709-680-0684.
680-0684. Fingers crossed. Let us know if you have any luck with this.
And of course, the other part I was going to say, it's my son's cat, and he happens to have is autistic, and so it's very important to him.
Well, let's hope that the cat is back ASAP.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it very much.
My pleasure. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Quick check with David before we go. How are we doing on the telephone there, Dave? All right, let's take a break for the news. When we come back, plenty of time for you. Don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the program. Just a quick reference to a tweet that just flew in here, and this is about Mike and Mike's concern regarding the Compass Group. And it's not only the Compass Group that he's spoken to a variety of other private contracts inside the world of public healthcare. So, Aaron is asking as to whether or not Mike thinks there's widespread corruption across the country, or is it just here that it's happening? Well, in Mike's defense, He has made mention of things regarding the Compass Group and their presence in various parts of the world. There's actually a site called Corporate Watch, and they have I'm going to send him this particular link. It's Corporate Watch talk about Broken Compass, the scandals of the Compass Group, and they itemise a variety of issues in different parts of the world. So, yes, Mike has spoken to that particular issue on this programme, but I guess ultimately his concern is for where he lives, as opposed to trying to pretend that he has some built-in and ultimate intimate knowledge with what's happening in BC with any other private contract that's let. And yes, we know the Auditor General is going into NL Health Services to look at value for money, a performance audit of these private contracts. We don't know how deep they're going to be able to get into the weeds, because it's one thing to understand the relationship between the provincial government and Compass or any other private offering, quite another to be able to get into their books to talk about how they deal with and pay or charge their subcontractors. I don't think the Auditor General has that authority or capacity, so we'll only get the headline knowledge about how the procurement worked, how the company was selected, to talk about the performance audit results itself, because we're never going to know exactly what Compass does with other companies it may work with, whether that be here or anywhere else in the world. But yes, Mike has indeed talked about some of the other Compass-related issues in other parts of the world, so I'm not sure what the point of the question was, but anyway, let's keep rolling. Let's go to line number 4. Wayne, you're on the air.
Yes, Paddy, I would like to thank you for everything that you've been doing for me and helping out. I did get somebody that is going to be doing the wheelchair ramp, and that's for me. And with the help that you've been given, and I hope everybody out there understands that you are there to help people and understand what they need. Thank you very much, Paddy.
I'm happy that it's worked out. So, we can't always get things done for people. We'll give it a shot. So, is this Daryl who came to see you?
Daryl?
Yeah, is that the name of the fellow who's going to help? Okay, because I think he ran out to have a look.
He came out and had a look, yes. But, no, Stephen.
Okay.
The last fellow that phoned me.
Okay.
And he was here Saturday, and he done the door, and the door box is put in. Now waiting on the weather to get the rest of it done.
Well, I'm just glad it's getting done, Wayne, so I appreciate the update, sir. Good news.
Yeah, it was good news, because he come here Saturday with his truck and trailer, and the man never slacked. He never stopped.
It's good people out there, Wayne. I'm glad you're getting the work done. So when does he think he's going to have it completed?
He's hoping to get the weather get the stepping that done. He's hoping if it's going to be fine the week, but looks at the forecast, it's not. The only fine days we got now is Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, I had a look at the forecast yesterday, and 7 days straight, just like today, socked in, cool and damp and rain. So fingers crossed this gets on sooner than later, and I appreciate the update this morning.
Yeah, and also the ice must be around here somewhere, Paddy, for the cold temperatures.
Yeah, quite possibly. I do know there's already been some icebergs spotted in various parts of the province, including off Twillingate, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. But anyway, thank you very much, and you and David, and have a good day.
The very same to you, Wayne. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, take care. Bye. All right, that's a good one. Good outcome there. Line number 5, Otto, you're on the air.
Oh, Paddy, how are you?
Very well this morning, thanks. How about you?
Oh, number 1, boy.
Good.
Never received that package yet, Paddy.
Don't know what to tell you. I'll keep looking in my mailbox to see if it makes it back to me.
Unreal, man. No, I was talking about the coyotes and foxes and lynx, but they're starving to death. None of them need no rabbits, eh? A lynx needs 200 rabbits a year to survive, eh? Going to be a problem in this area because they're going to attack the young people, I think. They eat, eh? Like yourself. You got to survive, boy.
Yeah, I mean, people small pets, people small children. I think there's a distinct worry there. You can see a coyote right here in the city. And there's this one fella that I follow on Twitter. I can't remember exactly what his handle is now, but he puts cameras out in the woods. He posted a picture yesterday of a coyote that is obviously extremely well fed. It's a pretty husky little animal. And, with the lack of rabbits, I suppose, is directly related to just how many coyotes are out there. And the $25 bounty apparently is nowhere near enough for people to be wanting to spend their time and the gas money and the effort that they have to put in to get a coyote. So,
right. Mainland now is more than that, right? They're paying good prices up there.
Apparently so, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Paddy boy, I don't know what to say about it, but I'm going to trap this year. Now, me and my grandson, there's going to be a course in Clareville on the 4th of May, Trapper's course, eh?
Okay.
I hope a lot of people, I think they will take Kenny in the class for 8 hours, right? $150, I think, to enroll in the course, eh?
What's the most important thing people need to know about trapping?
Oh, God, there's a lot of things. I've been at it for 50 years, probably. The drip on your nose, like a cold morning, your nose will run, eh? Well, that little drip can tell on you. You put an handkerchief or a mask over your nose, she said drip, eh? A coyote is pretty keen, eh? It's keener than a fox. Oh, God.
Okay.
Oh, a lot of things, but like on the mainland, they have those seminars, eh? Like trappers train young people how to trap.
Yep.
But here in Newfoundland, you don't have it, eh? But I went to conventions in Gander and Grand Falls years ago. Like Jennings from Cornerbrook, he caught the first coyote in 1986. They were brought on the own in cage from New Brunswick. They never come on the ice. I mean, years ago, it would be more ice to what is now, and neither coyote came across. But they were brought on the horn. Jenny saw me in the Trappers Convention. He caught one in 1986, the first one he caught in Cornerbrook. He was a trapper, right? And he told me they were brought on the horn.
Well, they're not native. That's one thing we know. So whether someone purposely brought them here or they made their way across on the ice from Labrador, I don't know. But I've heard that many times that they were purposely brought.
Yeah. I mean, lots of ice years ago. I mean, we had cold winters, right? Everything froze up. Nothing come across then. But he told me they were brought here in 1986. He caught the first one in 1986, he told me. He was a good trapper, Jennings, his name was. I met him to a convention, Trappers Convention, in Gander, I think it was. Yeah, I know he's still alive or passing on. Most of the trappers have died off now, because they're old. There's nobody in this area trapping now, I don't think. I know it's 3 or 4 died. They were good trappers, but the animal was getting overpopulated. Well, it got no one trapping now. A guy told me the other morning, he looked at his window, a link quite up in his driveway. And you don't see a link that often, hey. It's unreal.
And I'm not sure how many people are trapping these days, but interesting, and you're right. I mean, the issue regarding coyote and just the rabbit population, they're, of course, inherently linked. Anything else you want to say this morning, Otto?
We used to have a lumberjack contest in Clareville. I think I'm going to try to get that going. I don't know if it's in the Clareville there now or not, but I'm going to have a hack throwing contest. I got a tomahawk from the States there a while ago. I think we'll have a competition on the axe throwing, eh?
That's still pretty popular. I mean, geez, you see the lumberjack competitions on television, and I know that there's places where people go for recreation, a couple of beers and a bite to eat and throw the axes too. Otto, I got to get to the break, but I appreciate your time.
Okay, buddy.
Take good care.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And yes, I mean, the coyote is not native to the province. And in fact, there's only, I believe, 14 mammals that are actually native to Newfoundland. That would include the caribou, lynx, as Otto mentioned, otters, martens, black bears, muskrats, beavers, Arctic hare, and then a bunch of different bats. I think 3 different bats. Little brown bat, of course, the most popular one here in the province. Let's take a break. When we go back, Carl's here to talk about the Husky oil spill. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Carl, you're on the air.
Hey, good morning, Patty. How are you?
Doing excellent. How about you?
Oh, wonderful.
Good.
The news last week on Friday, I think it came out about the spill offshore that Husky was fined $2.5 million for a release. Apparently, it was one of the biggest releases in Canada.
It's the largest offshore oil spill in this province's history.
Amazing and wonderful that, the process took care of itself. It went through, the legal portion. Obviously, there was investigations, and it turned out with this result, which, makes the industry aware of the importance of looking out to the environment. I think the charges were under the Migratory Bird Act, and obviously to do with polluting the ocean. And the Environment Department of the federal government, the government of Canada, took the interest in it and pursued those charges, and I'm sure there was a detailed investigation. I think this happened in 2018.
It did happen in 2018. There were some sanctions about resuming production offshore that were handled by the CNLOPB. But the issue here is, look, the spill and the whole concern about the flow line connector and the who knew what, when, and what was done about it put 250,000 litres of oil into the Atlantic Ocean. And the file at $2.5 million is $10 a litre. So as much as it feels like there was some consequence, I would imagine Cenovus is tickled pink with the outcome. Because that, just for context regarding their revenue, a fine of $2.5 million represents less than 1% of the $4.1 billion in net earnings as Cenovus reported in 2023. So in the big scheme of things, this is very little money for a very profitable company.
No, I agree. And like you say, these oil companies, deep pockets and $2 million pocket change. But the message is there, and I'm sure. And in the details of this story, now you straighten me up as you see fit. But I think the problem was when they discovered a problem, they restarted, and then caused an additional spill. Is
That's
that
right.
That work?
That's right.
Yeah. So the response was poor, and the plan once you discover a spill, you stop. You make everything safe, you protect the environment, and you do an investigation. And when it's safe to do so, you restart. And that was the problem.
You're 100% right. Now, Cenovus has accepted responsibility. They know it was their doing, and that's okay too. But I don't think oil companies want to be spilling oil. That's not in their best interest. Whether it be investigations and stalling production, going through the courts, and the eventual fine, it becomes bigger than $2.5 million for them. The whole trick is as to whether or not that company and others operating offshore have listened and heard and are doing every single thing possible, and I think they probably are, to avoid spilling oil or any other lubricant or whatever's used offshore into the water. But it's happened on the small scale several times over the years, and this one just so happened to be the biggest one in history, so it gets a bit more attention than some of the others.
No, of course. And like you say, these oil companies are huge, a couple of $1 million one way or the other. But in the last 5 years, I would say that there's been a fortune spent in investigating this problem, re-engineering, getting solutions, etc. So, I hope for better outcomes in the future, as does Cenovus, as does the federal government of Canada. Back on land, we got a situation down here on the Bjorn Peninsula. I brought it up last week about garbage falling down into the same ocean. And this is under the jurisdiction of the provincial government. And the provincial government has been notified of this mess, that the garbage has fallen down into the ocean. And the response is non-existent. The reputation, I guess, of Newfoundlanders is at risk as far as I'm concerned. And in one situation, you stop immediately, you recover, you protect the environment and all that. Very important. But in this situation, down here on the Bjorn Peninsula, the workings of an old abandoned dump that was remediated, the remediation is failing, and today and every day, the garbage falls down into the ocean.
Yeah, I've seen the pictures.
Government has been made aware of this, and I personally have been playing with this for a couple of years. And like you say, those pictures are from last spring and have made a route through the provincial governments, all the email chains, anybody who I can send it to, I'm sending it. But the response is none. And, the look, from my perspective, I'm embarrassed as a Newfoundlander to say that in 2024 that the government is watching, turn a blind eye to domestic garbage going into the very same ocean. We're fisher people. We're supposed to be, and we are, I shouldn't say we're supposed to be, we are living off of this ocean. And like you say, we should take some pride in it. And the government of Newfoundland, through the Natural Areas Department that run that ecological reserve down here in Fortune, should take, the whole reporting process don't seem to exist. I've been at this now for a couple of years trying to figure out who to report it to. They don't even appear. If you go through the website and go through the snakes and ladders, you find call Crime Stoppers. Now, call Crime Stoppers with this type of stuff is a very complicated problem, no doubt. But the response is none. And unfortunately, today and every day, garbage falls down into the ocean, and the government of Newfoundland is well aware of it. The Department of the Environment of the government of Newfoundland is directly responsible for it. MHA is aware of it. Lots of folks in tourism is aware of it. But the response, crickets. And I have, took this on as a hobby. But I'm ashamed myself as a Newfoundlander, and it's good and try to explain that to somebody down the line of coast. How do you justify? And like anything, your house, I'm sure, is half decent. You start letting it fall down, somebody will come to you and say, hey, boy, she's falling down and she looks terrible, and poor reflection on the community. And what we got going down here at the Fortune Head Ecological Reserve, which should be a place where nature is pristine and the story is presented in such a way that we be proud of it. And unfortunately, the story is a mess. Government is well aware of it, and interest in making any kind of remediation or any kind of an attempt to slow the damage or stop the damage apparently is non-existent. And like I say, you can walk out across the countryside here and see no evidence.
I appreciate the time again this morning, Carl. And yes, if government is aware of garbage going into the Atlantic Ocean, then there's actually rules on the books about what needs to be done and timelines associated with it. So the fact that it's not getting done is completely bizarre. Now, there's plenty of landfills around the province that are close proximity to the coastline. So whether even be leachades making their way into the water or otherwise, when government can mitigate it or do something about it, they obviously should. I got to get to the news, Carl, but I appreciate making time for the show.
God love you. Have a great day. Thanks for the opportunity.
Happy to do it. Take good care of yourself. Bye-bye.
All the very best. Bye.
Okay, here we go. So let's take a break for the news. When we come back, we know that there's a runoff for a council seat out in the town of Paradise. We've had a couple of candidates on in the past. Another one is joining us right after the news. That's Aaron Furlong. Don't go away.
The Tim Power Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Good morning, Aaron Furlong. You're on the air.
Hi, Patty. How are you doing?
Excellent today. How about you?
I'm really good. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Happy to do it.
I guess you can guess why I'm calling. Paradise by-election is the election day is tomorrow, so I was just calling to encourage people to get out to vote. As you know, municipal elections, especially by-elections, have extremely low voter turnouts. So I was hoping to just encourage as many people as possible to get out and use their voices to choose who is going to be representing them on council.
I'll give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to the voters in Paradise.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So my name is, again, Erin Furlong. I am originally from Bayvert, moved to Paradise in 2013, and I'm currently working at NL Health Services as a behavior management specialist within the long-term care facilities here in the St. John's area. Myself and my family, like I said, have been here since 2013. I have 2 young boys. They both go to school there, play sports there. We're a very involved family in our town, and we absolutely love Paradise. We've made it our home.
there's lots going on. I mean, some of the candidates who have called the programme already, and so be it, they'll focus in on the issues that are important to them. Things like high school and what have you, which of course is very much provincial jurisdiction, even though the council can advocate on behalf of the residents, obviously. For me, and I've brought this forward, and sometimes it becomes a bit of an eye roller type of conversation, but with just how quickly Paradise has grown, I'm not so sure the infrastructure is kept up in full. Number one, the roadways. The snarl of traffic in Paradise is unbelievable. I don't know how people deal with it every day. It's bad enough in St. John's.
Yes, yeah. So, during this campaign, as I've been going around talking to people, as you can see on my posters and on my signs and things like that, I am fighting for better services. So when I've been going out talking to people, as I've knocked on doors and spoken to people in the community, a lot of what I hear is the traffic issues and, the snow clearing issues. But there's so much more than that. And my eyes were widened even more than they had already been when I started speaking to people, because where we have, a huge population of people in Paradise who are like me, who moved from a smaller town back into the metro area, into Paradise, living in subdivisions, we don't see the issues that the people that have been living in Paradise for a long time, who, have completely different issues. So, for example, my subdivision, we have sidewalks, we have, good roads, but then there's people who have lived in Paradise for the last 50 years, and they're still fighting for basic things like water, sewer, sidewalks, good roads, things like that. So there's a huge diverse population in Paradise, and I feel like all of those people need to be represented on the issues that they see and the needs that they have. So, those are the types of things that I'm looking for. I'm looking to be that strong voice and that strong advocate. And anybody who knows me, or anybody who's heard me talk about the high school issues, knows that I'm okay being that strong voice, and I'm okay being the person who has to go against the grain if I have to, if it's what's needed for the people that are affected by the outcome. So better services is the biggest thing that I'm looking to advocate for, and as well, transparency and communication from the town. I found that a lot of people were very unaware of the things that are going on, or the reasons why those things are going on. So I feel like a little bit more communication and transparency from the town and the town council would be very, very helpful as well. So that's what I'm here for.
Fair enough. I mean, solid communications is good for the town, it's good for the residents. When there's a breakdown, of course, people's minds go to the worst case scenario, and then the next thing you know, we're just treading water. But what specifically is inside the better services envelope? We talked about roads for a second, so what else are we referring to?
Yeah, so, I feel like I did touch on a few of the things. So, not just the traffic issue, because that is obviously a huge issue in Paradise, but there are so many roads in Paradise that are just crumbling. There's roads with no sidewalks for children or even adults to walk on. There's, we need more walking trails for families. We need more services for seniors. We need, those houses and those places in the older parts of Paradise where the people are literally telling me that they feel like they have been left behind. So as you said, Paradise is growing and is growing astronomically. And I mean, that's one of the reasons why the high school was such an easy sell. So those people who are in the older parts of Paradise feel like they're being left behind, and rightly so. They're fighting for the basic things that the rest of us are happy to have, and not even realizing that we're lucky enough to have it. So, there's a lot that needs to be addressed, and I feel like, I can be that voice for those people. So, and I would love to be that voice for those people. I don't have a personal gain to get from being on council, more so than I just love to serve the people. I love to be in service of people. I find joy in it. So I would like to be that strong advocate for not just the people that I'm used to being around, like the small families, the median age group. I want to be the strong advocate for the seniors as well, and for the people who have lived here a long time. I do that for a living, essentially. I'm comfortable at that table of advocacy. So, I'd like to be that person for them.
I appreciate the time, and congratulations on throwing your hat in the ring, because it can be thankless, but we need more people to step up for municipal council seats. We've had a problem in the past for some communities. We didn't even have enough to have a quorum elected. So this is good that it's competitive in Paradise, and I appreciate your time. I wish you good luck.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome, Aaron. Take care.
Okay, bye.
All right, bye-bye. It's one of those things. Look, I mean, there's been some pretty active campaigns brought forward by municipalities, Newfoundland and Labrador. I think they call it Mark Your X or something. So not only to encourage people to get involved as the voter, get involved in the issues and the public discourse, but huge campaigns to try to get people to run. I mean, you've heard the stories as much as I have, that we've had some small communities that unfortunately we've seen some dysfunctional councils happen, and that's going to be part of it, unfortunately, in the future. You know, so better training up front for councillors, because it's one thing to be well intentioned, quite another to be fully abreast of how the processes work and the protocols work, and yes, to have enough people so we have competitive elections. How many communities last go around just had enough people run to actually fill the seats? How many communities did we see not even enough people run to fill all of the seats in the council chambers? So yes, and for some communities we know it's full-on volunteer job, and a lot of the things that we rely on day in and day out are under the authority or the auspices of municipal governments, period. So good on Aaron and everyone else who's taking a swing at it in Paradise. Let's go to line number 4. Chris, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty. How are you today?
Great today. How about you?
Oh, I'm not bad. I'm just calling to talk about Tent City a little bit more. We get the callers on earlier today about that.
Okay.
One of the things I just kind of wanted to touch on was I feel like what's happening with government is that they're really just trying to distract from the fact that their options aren't sufficient for what the folks down at Tent City and homeless folks all around the province need. And I really, it's kind of upsetting that this fresh housing minister is using his experience in media to distract from the problems that the government that he's joined is allowing to carry on. They don't really seem to be offering many solutions, and I just wanted to bring that point up is that I'd like to see the government, instead of trying to distract and discredit people who are trying to help, and just themselves step up and help and actually offer viable solutions for people who are living in these positions and who are vulnerable members of our community.
What constitutes viable? Because, say, for instance, someone's been offered one of the rooms at the Comfort Inn. Is that not viable? Is that not a much better situation than being in a tent behind the Colonial Building?
I mean, it'd be viable if people were actually being offered rooms at the Comfort Inn. I mean, the Comfort Inn, they said it was going to be open in March. We're coming to the end of April. As far as I know, it's still not staffed. So it's not a viable option if they're not actually offering people a place where they can go. It's all fine and well to say, hey, you got a room at the Comfort Inn, but where's the actual room? People are being offered it, but they're not actually being moved in. So it's viable.
You know, even if there was not the entire staff hired, because you're right, my understanding is the people that are there have been there for quite a while. So I don't know if there's been any new residents accepted or housed at the Comfort Inn. But even if all the wraparound services aren't in place as of yet, whether it be for physical health or mental health or addictions or what have you, wouldn't it simply be an obviously better option than being in a tent out in the elements?
100%. So why isn't the government making those offers? Why aren't they going to people and presenting that as an option?
Well, see, that's where the disconnect happens for me, is because we are told, whether or not it's accurate, I don't know, but
this is what I find is upsetting, is that they're saying that they're offering these options when in reality they're not. They're lying to us, the citizens, their constituents, the people who are most vulnerable. They're saying that they're offering these options when in the reality they're simply not. The option will be there, according to them, and I believe that the Comfort Inn will open up. It will be staffed, maybe not appropriately or sufficiently, but it will be. But at this point, they say, oh, well, what about the Comfort Inn? And I say, well, exactly, what about the Comfort Inn? Where are we? What's the progress? When will we get people being moved in there? How come people aren't being offered now to go there and see what's going to happen without the staff that they require? And just, is it not a better option? Sure, but again, it's not an option if it's not actually offered. It's fine and dandy to stay in the house, but where's the actual, where are these rooms? That's what I find very frustrating. And the same, they say they offer shelters, they offer rooms, and the rooms aren't, those rooms, they say, like saying that some of the shelters are not viable. They're a health hazard to anyone, especially people who have been living outside and their health may be compromised because of that, or because of just, health concerns they've had previously. And the food that this offering is despicable. So those aren't viable options. And then they say, well, we're going to offer them a hotel room. well, again, do so. Please just offer it and actually make it available. And don't just say, oh, it'll be ready at some point, and then act like you've done what you're supposed to do or you've done enough, because it's not.
For me, the issue of permanent housing, it all sounds right, and we've had people talking about whether or not housing is a right, and of course the country has acknowledged it is. Not every province has done that either. But how does that translate into an actual place to live? Because building permanent housing is not a flip of a switch, and everyone knows that, and we understand that. And the last one for me, then I'll let you wrap it up. The whole concept of the Comfort Inn. Look, for starters, still looming questions, when we talk about dollars and cents as to what the final tally would be, because it's not just 3 years at $21 million, it's going to be more than that. Secondly, if it is not operated under the most important word that people associated with it as transition, then basically we're just going to have another shelter. Now, I'm going to remain optimistic that this is going to be helpful and people will actually transition back into the workforce. Their mental health issues have been stabilized. Their addictions have been dealt with and treated. So let's hope that transition is a key feature, because if that's not it, then we're basically just going through another shelter, albeit with your own room, with your own key, not the general quarters that we see in some of these emergency shelters. Yes, the food will probably be better at the Comfort Inn and those types of things, but unless we have all of those programs like the Employment Stability Program and others, and maybe offering GED and some real life job training, all those things that people, if they want help, they're going to have to accept the entire gamut of help, because if not, we're just going to have a turnstile, and a turnstile is not what we need.
100%, I agree. And I mean, I think the point here is, I think, we're putting, your words there, Patty, is that they need to accept the help. But I mean, the government needs to offer it in the first place, right? So I think we need to turn around and put the focus back on the government and not put the blame on the folks who are living homeless, right? We need to say what happened here in the first place that caused this, which to me has been a lack of government intervention in employment, in housing, in the shelter systems. The government has, not really done anything to stop these issues from coming up. And now they're putting the blame back on the people who are suffering the consequences of their lack of action. And I think it's important to harp on them and to put the blame squarely where it belongs, which is in government's hand, and make sure that government is offering those long-term solutions. Because like you say, these are a transitional place, is what it should be. And if the government isn't offering and putting in place, society as a whole isn't putting in place options and the programs necessary to get these people back onto their feet so that they can lead happy, healthy lives as functioning members of our community, then the government is failing them and just basically shunting off the problem to the outskirts of the city, right? Basically, to me, when that's one of my biggest fears, that the Comfort Inn is going to be another one of these shelters, and it's just going to be on the outskirts of the city where, out of sight, out of mind. So that's, again, I don't think anyone should would rather live in a tent than live in a hotel room. Obviously, I think the hotel room is going to be a lot more comfortable, a lot more safer. That's my opinion. People might disagree, and that's, up to them to disagree and to their life to live. But if the government doesn't offer those services carrying on, we're not going to solve this problem. We're just going to shunt it off somewhere else and try to, put it out of people's minds. And frankly, to me, that's a recipe to make things worse. So 100% agree with what you're saying. They need to offer these programs, GED, job training. Jobs Guarantee is a program I think that we should look into. A universal basic income, right? So that people do have wages, they do have money, so that they can support themselves, so that they can carry on, they can stay housed, they can stay fed, they can stay healthy. If the government doesn't continue or open up these programs and expand these programs, we're just going to see exactly what you're saying. And I agree. But again, we don't need to say these people need to accept the help. The government first needs to offer it. Make sure it's viable and a realistic solution. And then if people stop offering it, then sure, maybe we can talk about why. Well, again, I don't think we need to remember we're not blaming the people who are suffering from government's lack of action.
I appreciate the time, Chris. Thank you.
No problem. You have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye. Look, when the government says we're offering, can anyone give me just straight up, simple to understand English, here's what the offers have been? And if they are simply the shelters that some people have already had the negative experience with, they're not going to accept it. Whether or not you think they should is almost irrelevant at this point. But if we have that lease in place, and it would be a much safer and healthier environment, if it's not being offered, I guess the question is, why not? Is it simply because there hasn't been staffed up yet? And if so, just say it. All this beating around the bush. And I think, maybe some of the comments from the minister are possibly being misconstrued somewhat, and it's not exactly happening. But let's go ahead and take our final break of the morning. And I did speak to a report I read about, and I guess it sometimes feels cold to go right back to dollars and cents, but that's the reality of life. So when there was an examination of 93,426 admissions at the teaching hospital in Toronto, looking at the length of time people were hospitalised and the costs associated with it, housed people versus homeless people. So even if you don't care and you're sick of hearing about it, sick of talking about it, the fact is that it can really be an extremely costly affair down the line. Homeless people were staying twice as long with twice the cost. Now, it's maybe not quite as generalized as that, but I read the report. It is clear. So it's in our collective best interest, whether you come at it societally or morally or financially. Let's take our final break of the morning. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Eileen, you're on the air.
Hello?
Hi there.
Oh, am I on the air?
You are on the air.
Okay. I just heard a gentleman speaking about the hotel, what was it? Comfort Inn, Holiday Inn, whatever. Anyway, for the homeless people.
Mm-hmm.
I was on before. Some people don't want help. I have a son in that situation. He doesn't want help. He doesn't need help. And I heard of the people going down into tent, whatever it's called, with their cases of beer or their drugs, whatever. Those people don't want help. There are people, yes, some of them want help. I know
sure
that.
They are.
Yeah. And please God, those people get the help that they need. But to me, the government is enabling a lot of these people for their addictions and whatever.
How so?
Well, giving them a place to stay, roof over their head. They're still going out and using their drugs or whatever. But there are some, yes, that want help and need help, and please God, they'll get the help.
But how is government enabling them to drink or use drugs or what have you if they have some sort of addiction?
Because they're giving them a roof over their head, a nice warm bed.
But they're not.
In the hotel they are.
Yeah, but the people apparently aren't being offered a space in that hotel. And look, even if they are, and I'm going to stick by this, if it's just simply a place to lay your head and eat, then we're not doing anybody any favors, period.
No.
If we are actually trying to help people get back on their own 2 feet and transition from homelessness to whether it be their mental health issues are stabilized, their physical issues are stabilized, they get some training, that kind of stuff, unless we're doing that, then we are basically just going to create a much more comfortable shelter. And that's not the answer for anybody.
No. And that's what I'm calling enabling. Yes, like you said, to get people back on their feet, that's wonderful. But there's some that you can't help.
That's quite possibly true, and that's always going to be the case, and it doesn't matter who the government is.
It's always going to be the case.
Fair enough.
Yes.
I appreciate the thoughts, Eileen. You've had the last word. Would you like to say anything else quick?
No, I think that's it. I do enjoy your show. I love listening to you. No, you are a huge help to so many people, I've got to say.
Well, I appreciate that.
And thank God for this show, that people can voice their opinion, and thank God for you.
I appreciate the kind words. Thank you, Eileen. Thanks for the call.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye. All right, good show today. Big thanks to all hands who will support the program, and we will indeed pick up this conversation again tomorrow morning, right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. We'll talk in the morning. Bye-bye.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.